Hello everybody, it's the beginning of the month and the first video of a new theme here at Geezerology 2.0. This month we're doing a series of wartime movies starting with Three Kings. This film by David O. Russell is about a group of U.S. soldiers who steal a stash of Iraqi gold in the aftermath of the Persian Gulf War in 1991. George Clooney stars as Army Special Forces Major Archie Gates, who enlists three soldiers played by Mark Wahlberg, Cube and Spike Jonze for the heist. Along the way, Gates and his men get caught up in the populist uprisings against Saddam Hussein's regime and stumble into roles as heroes to many of the local rebels. Three Kings is a pretty good blend of dark comedy, wartime action, and geopolitical drama. It was a critical and commercial success in late 1999, a particularly fertile time for young, inspired filmmakers like Russell. This was Russell's third film after Spanking the Monkey in 1994 and Flirting with Disaster in 1996. He would have his biggest success in 2012 with Silver Linings Playbook, which garnered a slew of Oscar nominations, winning one for Jennifer Lawrence. Three Kings did saddle Russell with a reputation for being difficult to work with. He and Clooney infamously got a fist fight on set after Russell allegedly got nasty with some crew members. But in the end, Russell delivered a pretty solid movie. I got into it around 2001 or so when I picked it up on DVD, and I've watched it 3 or 4 times since. I haven't seen Three Kings in a couple of years though, so I'm going to have another look to refresh my memory. Both Bill and Bob have told me they've seen Three Kings, though I don't know how often or whether they liked it or not. We'll find out here pretty quickly, but before we go, please subscribe to our channel at Geezerology 2. Check out some of our earlier videos, hit that like button if you're so inclined, and drop us a comment to let us know your history with this movie. Okay, off to watch Three Kings. We'll be back in a flash. So Three Kings. I watched it last night. First time I'd seen it in a couple years. And this is a movie that I've watched it 4 or 5 times, maybe half a dozen times. And every time I watch it, I just think it's great, but it's not a movie that ever sticks with me. You know, it's like one of those things where when I start thinking about what are my favorite movies, you know, I'll list off a bunch of things, but Three Kings is never in the conversation. But I watched it last night, and it was right back there. I'm going, man, this is such a great movie. You know, I'm wondering why it doesn't have the legs that it probably should have.
You know, I saw the movie when it was released theatrically, and I remember liking it, but I had not watched it again in the intervening decades. So watched it again a couple days ago, and I did not remember the nuances of the film. I could have told you, oh yeah, okay, it's about a heist thing where they're trying to steal gold at the end of the first Gulf War, but I was blown away by the nuances of this film.
Yeah, and I got that too this time, and possibly because you know we have a new war in the news now that really kind of parallels this thing.
Very
and I caught a lot of that when I was watching this last night.
Yeah,
I think the funny thing about it. About the movie to me, because I hadn't seen it since '99 when it was in the theaters as well, and I liked it at the time. And if you recall, I mean, even the movie itself came out maybe 5 or 6, 7 years after the war had occurred in the early '90s.
8 years.
Yeah, so I mean, it was kind of receding from memory, and it was interesting to revisit that because I had to remind myself of the detail because. You know, when I go back in time, you know, the Gulf War itself got overwritten by the Iraq War, which was a whole different setup. And it's kind of like the adjunct to this war itself, because they make a big deal in Three Kings about the fact that the war's over quickly. The Iraqi army's defeated, with almost no impact on the coalition forces, and yet they've stopped, and Saddam is still in power. And that comes up a few times, and obviously it's one of the key points because there's this whole ongoing civil war between the Iraqi rebels who want to get rid of Saddam and the Republican Guard that's there to kind of keep him in power. And the Americans in this particular instance are in between, and they don't really care at all about it. They just want to get the goal and get the hell out. Yeah. Without getting killed. So to me it's kind of interesting. And as you guys are saying, I mean, there is a parallel to what's going on now, but the parallel is also a great kind of mirror image where everything is in the reverse. The Gulf War is a war that is authorized under a UN resolution. It's got a coalition of 40 countries led by the U.S. It's got a very stated goal of eradicating Iraq, its conquering of Kuwait.
Right.
And so all of that plays into why the movie itself is kind of like a little set piece, and yet these things still echo on today, this very day. Things that we still haven't gotten sorted out. It's a very interesting movie. It's certainly a great heist movie, but as you're noting, it is nuanced far more than I remember.
Well, what I forgot is that I thought of it too as a heist movie, as I mentioned in the intro. I thought, this is as much of a heist movie as it is a war movie. Well, it kind of is, but to me, the heist isn't the end goal of this movie. The heist was just. It felt to me like the heist was just a means to an end. A heist was a way for them to get into this village and see what's going on, and then decide that and figure out a way how to make this happen to help get these people out of there. It was just very well done, and everything was just seamless. I didn't find any problems with it. But the big thing, the ones that struck me was there was a line in there where George Clooney says, and his character is getting ready to retire. He's going home, and then he's done. Right? He's done his thing. He's a special forces officer, and he just he said the line, I still don't know why we're here. What were we doing here? And the Spike Jonze character and Mark Wahlberg character, they were all disappointed because they didn't really see any action. So they kind of forced that action right at the beginning when Mark Wahlberg shot that Iraqi who was trying to surrender, and they didn't know what that meant. It's like, so we can shoot somebody, Yeah,
are we still shooting?
Are we still shooting? Yeah. Well, I don't know. Well, what the hell? Boom! He shoots him. And then the other thing was a whole deal about how these rebels were just abandoned. They thought that George Bush and the Americans were there to be their saviors, and it turns out that that wasn't working out at all. That they were just abandoned just to be left there and fend for themselves.
Well, stop me if you've heard this before, but an American president tells a group of people in another country that they need to rise up. Right. America's got their back. Yeah. I think I've heard this a few times, and
I heard that a couple 3 weeks ago, right?
Yeah, and so we've got these circumstances, and the crazy thing is, while the Gulf War itself is certainly something you can explain, and it has a rationale to it, and I sort of disagree with the with these GIs issue that they don't know exactly why they're there. I mean, I think what they're disappointed in, as you mentioned, is they never got to fire their weapons and do anything, that is going to translate to glory or war stories back home. But the fact is, it did make sense for the U.S. to lead a coalition like this because it was, an egregious breakthrough in terms of what international law stood for. An invasion of another country that's not justified in any defensible way.
Well, I think the George Clooney character was saying that more through a soldier's perspective than a.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
I think the bigger issue is what you then realize, and this is where those nuances come to play, where all of a sudden these guys are in a circumstance where they can't tell who is the good guy or who's the bad guy. Everybody seems, it's confusing. It's very Vietnam-like, It's very much a question of what are we doing now? It actually doesn't make any sense because we're not pushing people out of an invaded country. We're trying to figure out if people on this, who are of the same country, need to have us intervening in some way, and that's beyond the remit. And yet, you could see in a very human way why there's a need for somebody to intervene.
Yeah.
Well, I remember. I think part of what Director Russell might have been trying to get to here was a lot of these service people were reservists who got called up. And so we had this, I remember the first Gulf War, we had this huge buildup. All these coalition forces were taking months and months to prepare. Saddam Hussein was promising the mother of all battles. I remember reading, opinion pieces about the size of the Iraqi army, and everybody's anticipating just this major clash. And then the thing is over almost before it even begins, and the Iraqi army just kind of folded like a, wet tissue paper. And the movie starts off, like you say, with the war suddenly over and all of these people, I didn't even fire a shot, and then they're having this uproarious celebrations over winning something that they didn't even fire a shot in. And the movie starts out as almost like a satirical farce, and you've got George Clooney's character banging a network reporter in his tent, and these soldiers celebrating and doing all of these stupid things, and they find a treasure map essentially in the butt cheeks of a captive Iraqi.
The ass map.
Yes, the ass. And it's like, oh, this is going to be a comedy, but then this movie segues into something very dark and violent. Then it segues into some very pointed commentary on American intervention elsewhere in the world, particularly in the Middle East. So the movie's all over the place, but miraculously they make it work.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It was just seamless. It just went from one thing to the next, and you didn't. I mean, there was nothing that jarred you into a sense. Oh, now we're here. Now we're here. Now we're here. It was just a nice, smooth ride.
Yeah, it was. And, this film was made, like you said, 8 years after the first Gulf War, but before the events of 9/11, and before we got into this endless war on terror, and before we had the quagmires of our Iraqi invasion and Afghanistan and all of those things. But you almost think the makers of this movie knew what was coming. And this film should be required viewing for anybody right now.
I was sitting there thinking, I wish there were a few people I wish would have seen this movie like a month ago.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And also I remember when our soldiers started returning from the first Gulf War, they were hailed as conquering heroes. And it was almost like we were trying to remove ourselves of this guilt over the way returning soldiers from Vietnam were supposedly treated. And also it's like, hey, we just won a war. First one since World War II. You know? And it wasn't much of a war, but it was the best one we had. You know?
Well, it was really the first time that we could wash the taste of Vietnam out of our mouths, right?
Exactly, right. But now, here we go right back into that same old, wash, rinse, repeat again with, the failure of Iraq, the failure of Afghanistan, and now are we on our way to another debacle? But regardless of how you approach this film, it was really marvelously done, whether you look at it as the comedy, a heist movie, a political commentary. It works on all of those levels. And when I was watching it again a couple of days ago, I was just sitting there going, how do I not remember all of this? How did all of that just fade from my memory? Because all I remembered was, okay, yeah, this is a movie about, some guys who try to liberate, stolen Kuwaiti gold at the end of the war. And I had forgotten all of those other aspects to it, or maybe at the time they just didn't resonate with me like they're resonating now.
I think that's part of it. Because it was just a story. When I watched them before, it was just a story, and where now it's now I watched it as sort of a real world event,
Yeah, but I mean, like, some of the scenes went from just drop dead hilarious to very moving. And like when they find the treasure map in the butt cheeks, and Mark Wahlberg is standing there and he orders the private to pull it out, and he gives him one latex glove. So, well, that's all you get. It's the Army.
That's all I have. I only have one glove.
But then later on, Mark Wahlberg is captured by the Iraqi Republican guards, and they're basically torturing and interrogating him. And Wahlberg's character has a brand new baby back at home. And the guy who's interrogating him starts telling him about how his wife lost her legs in a bombing and that his child was killed in a U.S. bombing. Well, then Wahlberg, trying to bond with this guy, says, well, I've got a new baby at home. We're both fathers. And the Iraqi says, no, we're not a father. I'm not a father because you killed my kid. That was really moving.
And it's very interesting because that whole interrogation scene starts with him asking, "What's up with Michael Jackson?" It's like, what is his deal? What have you done to him? Anyway, I think one of the things about why we probably don't remember this movie quite so well is that it came out in '99, which is a really good year for movies.
Yeah,
there were a lot of great movies.
Yeah, a lot. I mean, around the same time as Fight Club, and Spike Jonze had just put a rap on being John Malkovich.
Yes.
When he made this movie. And that came out within a couple of weeks of this movie. Of course, that was the year of American Beauty. That was the year of
Blair Witch
Project. Election. Yeah. It was a fertile time. It was a fertile time for our young auteur filmmakers, man.
I would say, given some of the fallow years that we've had, a movie like this would have been far more honored and probably remembered instead of
this is
a really good movie.
Yeah, this is on the heels of the Quentin Tarantino surge. If you recall, when Tarantino broke through and made and just kind of blew open this whole mindset of indie auteur films, and then it wasn't too long after that where all of a sudden Hollywood discovered comic book movies, and everything became an algorithm, right? right. But yeah, it was a fertile time, and that might be it. Just kind of got lost in the shuffle of our memories because of everything else that came out at about the same time, right at the end of the century, man. This century closed with a bang in Hollywood, you know. And the funny thing is I was just, and this time I was just amazed because I was paying attention to the filmmaking too, because I started reading a little bit about David O. Russell. And man, he fought everybody. He fought everybody to make this film the way he wanted to make it. He fought MGM. He fought the producers of it. He fought his cast. He fought his crew. I mean, he was fighting he was fighting the people who were developing the film because they because they wouldn't do it the way he wanted to do it. And you notice that, I mean, the film it had a really weird sort of high contrasty, washed out look to it, you know, and which was intentional. And apparently it took. And I don't understand all the technical aspects of it, but it had something to do with the development process of the film. You know, this was before digital, and it had something to do. And he had to take this thing to like 4 different people before he found somebody who said, "Yeah, I can develop it the way you wanted to do it." Most of it being because it was just a real. It was a real delicate process, and it had to get it right, because if you didn't get it right, you screw up the film, and they had to go back and reshoot it, everything, right? So, and they couldn't get Lloyd's of London or anybody to ensure this process, you know, because it was so risky. But he finally found somebody who would take the chance to do it. But yeah, there was that, and then MGM kept cutting the budget on him. I was reading that, where he's fighting over that. He had to fight MGM over that little Michael Jackson thing that you were just talking about, because if you notice that really didn't go anywhere, because he had to edit out the payoff on that conversation, because MGM didn't want that the discussion in there about Michael Jackson's pedophilia, you know, which is where that conversation was going. He ended up having to trim out the payout of that, and also Russell was apparently he was just improvising every day. He had all these ideas on how he wanted to shoot this movie, and only using one camera and doing long takes and things like that. And he wasn't storyboarding anything out. He wasn't planning his camera shots or anything like that. And the crew was all getting pissed off because they were putting in these long ass days, because Russell kept having them just try stuff on the spot. You know, it's like, oh, Russell have an idea. Oh, let's do this. Let's do this. Let's do that. And he's driving them all crazy. And so he's fighting the crew and all that. And that's how he ended up getting in a fist fight with George Clooney, because Clooney got tired of him bullying the crew, and Clooney decided to stand up for the crew, and they got in a fist fight on set. And Clooney to this day says that he'll never work with this guy again. It was such a bad experience. Yeah, he went on to make a few pretty good movies. Like I say, his big one was Silver Linings Playbook a few years later, and that's the only other David O. Russell movie that I've watched. And yeah, that was okay. I didn't much care for it, but I thought this one was great. You know, the final product. All the battles that he went through, and the trials and the tribulations he went through to get this done. Man, it came out. The final product was fantastic. It was a directorial marvel. I didn't go back and check. Was he even nominated as best director for this or anything? I don't know. But man, he put everything he had on the screen, man. I mean, it was great. I mean, between the look of the film, the acting was great. the direction was great. The score was great. I didn't think we needed those those explanations, those graphic explanations of
Well, let's
the bullets going into. It's like we didn't need to see that. I thought that was a little over the top, but I was going back and forth. I landed on a 4 on this thing. I wanted to go 4.5, but I just couldn't quite get there. So I gave. So it's a top end of a 4 for me. It was great. It was a great movie.
I would give it a 4 myself. I thought, being an old Air Force public affairs guy, I appreciated the media aspect of this in terms of dealing with embedded reporters in an environment where they're looking for the stories that are going to get either the coverage that they need or they believe is necessary, or the coverage that they need personally so that they can burnish their own reputations. I thought that was actually toward the end, it becomes a critical part of how the movie gets wrapped up. But it was great to see Nora Dunn do her kind of Christine Amanpour imitation, because I thought she pulled it off really well, which is, both committed to the job and committed to the glory of the job. And it's hard to do that, so I did appreciate that as well. And it was a way, I think Russell did a good job of kind of incorporating that in, again, to, reiterate the seamlessness of it. It made sense. It wasn't like an add-on thing. It was a part of how the whole thing kind of moved into motion.
I would go along with both of you guys and rate this as a 4. I'd like to go higher, but I just can't say that it's a perfect film. The only aspect of the film that troubles me a little bit, and I don't know how else you could have done it really, is where at the end they save these refugees and they get them over the border into Iran, out of Iraq and away from Saddam. So once again, it's that thing of, the white saviors are coming in to help these poor oppressed people of color. And that's a little troubling.
What's troubling about that to you?
That's been done a lot of times where we like to portray ourselves as being saviors, and we've got to step in because, well, you people just aren't able to do this for yourself or whatever. Kind of, a driving Miss Daisy type thing or stuff like that. And so it's a little troubling that in some ways we caused this mess, but then, here at the end, we're going to be the saviors.
I think you always have to be attuned to the sense that there's always this kind of notion of American exceptionalism that sort of comes into play sometimes, that maybe isn't necessarily 100% earned. But I don't know that plays so much in this scenario. I mean, they happen to be there. They happen to have the tools and the notion of how they could pull it off. And by the time we're familiar with the people that they're trying to help, we want them to do that, and it doesn't matter however they're going to figure it out, and whether it seems like it's it had to be us or it wouldn't have happened. I don't know.
I didn't see that. To me, I didn't get any sense of heroism here. I mean, these guys weren't heroes. These guys weren't saviors. They were doing this because they screwed up and they got caught, and these people caught them. So these people used it against them to say, okay. I mean, they did it to save their own asses, not to not to be saviors. At the end, they kind of had this come to Jesus moment.
Preceding up to that, basically, they struck a deal that's like, okay, you help us, we'll help you.
Right, yeah.
We'll give part of the gold to the refugees in exchange for you guys, giving us these cars and other things. So, yeah, they had a symbiotic relationship. And it was there at the very end where the three kings, Clooney, Wahlberg, and Ice Cube, all agreed to give up the gold in order to save these refugees, So, and So once, that just kind of struck me a little bit as that, great white savior type thing again. Because, up to that point, they were very dismissive of the Iraqis and everything that was happening there.
I thought Clooney was just fantastic here. He was great, and this is really how I got onto this movie. Is that this was early in Clooney's career, right? And he was coming off the disastrous Batman and Robin. This was just right after that. But I was a big fan of his from ER, and also from the Robert Rodriguez Tarantino movie, From Dusk Till Dawn. He was still at a point where he was still trying to get his career going.
Yeah, he was a TV guy.
Especially trying to rebound from Batman and Robin. In fact, I saw that that David O. Russell originally wrote this for Clint Eastwood, and Eastwood wanted no part of it. So he rewrote it a little bit for Nicolas Cage. And Nicolas Cage said no, and Clooney ended up going to Russell and begging him for this part, and finally wore Russell down enough to say, okay, you're the guy. And I thought he was great. I thought Wahlberg was great in this. This is coming off of Boogie Nights for Mark Wahlberg. I thought Wahlberg was really good in this. And I thought Spike Jonze was really good in this movie too.
It's hard to be that dumb, to play that dumb.
Yeah,
he is not a dumb guy.
And he was a first-time actor. He had never acted before.
I loved We're Going After Bullion. Oh, you mean the stuff they make soup?
Yeah, he was happy that he was called up because he didn't really have a job.
Yeah, well, but he wanted some action. Yeah. He was so upset he didn't get to see any action. I was like, he got so excited when Mark Wahlberg shot that guy right at the beginning of the movie. He goes, "Whoa! I got to see some action." There you have it, gang. 3 Kings from David O. Russell. Did you like this film? Drop us a comment to let us know. And if you haven't already, hit those subscribe and like buttons. Join us next week for a discussion of Zulu, a 1964 British film that featured a breakout performance from Michael Caine. See you then.